Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Johanna and I am so proud to introduce you and welcome you to this learning opportunity from the Young Adult Supports and Services Learning Community at the TA Network. This is a learning community that brings together individuals who share a concern and passion for age-appropriate and appealing systems and supports for young adults. Our learning community provides a forum to discuss and learn together about the important and emerging trends to create better outcomes during the transition into adulthood. This learning community convenes a vast and diverse group of stakeholders who work in partnership with young adults, learning together as we interact regularly. Today's session is our once monthly opportunity to provide you new and pertinent information to your work, and I'm very excited for the content we have planned for you all. We hope that in addition to joining us today, that you will join us online at the Ideas at the Institute. More information will be provided later for engaging conversation and access to resources in between our webinar-based learning opportunities. Our learning community is co-hosted by two individuals. I'm just one of them. So wearing many hats today. Johanna Bergen, I'm the Executive Director of Youth Move National, a key partner at the TA Network, providing technical assistance to the children and youth behavioral health field, and proud to be co-lead of this learning community. As Tiara has already shared with us today, because there are so many of us on the call, we do encourage you to enter your questions for our presenter into the chat box. We will be facilitating and organizing those questions for response a little bit later this afternoon. In order to do that, I have help from my co-lead. I'm going to pass things over to Gwen White for her own introduction, and then we will get started today. And Gwen, if you have started to introduce yourself, we cannot hear you yet, but we would love to hear you shortly.
How is this?
That sounds great.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I am Gwen White, and I have the privilege of co-facilitating the Yaz Learning Community with Johanna, as she said. And we are very pleased to have you here today. And please use the chat box to communicate with us, and Johanna and I will be monitoring that closely. I have the privilege today of introducing Tanisha Freeman Foster, who I have had the privilege of knowing for about 6 years. Tanisha, she is the project director for the Florida Healthy Transitions Grant, and we're very excited to have her and her expertise. And Tanisha will tell you more about how we're organizing our time, but I will reinforce that we're going to hold as much as possible questions till the end. So be typing them in the chat box. And with that, Tanisha, please take over.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Johanna, Gwen, and Tiara for your support today, and also thank you for the opportunity to discuss what we've been doing here in Florida with our Healthy Transitions program. And so today, we're going to review some of the strategies that we have implemented for the program, and also some of the things that we were doing prior to the coronavirus, and some of the things and the adaptations that we've made since the coronavirus. And so again, thank you all again for taking the time to participate in today's webinar. And I know that many of your organizations and your services have been impacted by COVID. So thank you again for your time, and thank you for making time to be here to be a part of this today. Okay, this webinar again is hosted by the National TA Network for Children's Behavioral Health and is operated by and coordinated through the University of Maryland. So some of our learning objectives today are to review the best practices in outreach, communication, and engagement, describe the Florida Healthy Transition Team's outreach to engage youth and young adults in behavioral health services and supports, provide examples from Florida Healthy Transitions of lessons learned around the integration of youth and young adult voice, and then offer specific strategies for replicating these activities and strategies in your local areas. So, our icebreaker for today, I think with everything going on in our environment and in our communities, that it is very important for each of us to take time and pause for our own self care as we care for our others, for our family members, and for our clients and participants. And also as we continue to navigate this environment that we're currently in. So, our icebreaker for today is: name one thing that you did as a youth and still do today. And we'll ask for you to just type that in the chat box. And so the reasoning also, as you're typing that in, the reasoning behind this is that
Oh,
currently
nice.
that currently our worlds are constantly in our worlds we're constantly processing information and updates on the virus, and it's really easy to become lost in this and forget about the positive aspects of our lives, which include our family members, our loved ones, pets, things, and memories that we have from past experiences. And so with this being said, this is one of the activities that we currently facilitate in our organization. We make it our business to create activities that bring smiles and laughter several times a week. And so I felt that it would only be right to share an activity with you all and just take some time to reflect on the past and the fun things that we did and some of us might still do. So I've seen dancing, riding a bicycle, listening to musicals, coloring. These are all great. So thank you very much again for sharing. And you can continue to enter those things in the chat box. All right, so again, today we're going to discuss Florida Healthy Transitions and some of the strategies that we've implemented in our program and working with youth and young adults. This description and illustration, I thought that it was very interesting because I think sometimes with services, although we don't mean to, we want youth, young adults, and their families to come to us. But really, in actuality, when people are in crisis, sometimes they don't understand how to navigate systems and they don't understand how to figure it out for themselves. And so we have to meet them where they're at. And a lot of times that is in their community. Currently is virtually, but meeting them where they're at instead of expecting them to come to us. And the little help signs are our partnerships and our linkages within our community. And so our goal is that there's no wrong door, that no matter where you are at in your community, that people are connected to each other enough to help you navigate through that service, whether you are a senior citizen, whether you are a youth or a young adult. um, Regardless of your situation, there is a connection. And so the more connections and linkages we have, the better we're able to engage with young people. And so my question to you all would be, who are your partners, both formal and informal? Because we know that sometimes we have partners who are able to attend our meetings and are able to participate in activities with us, but we also have those silent partners who are their schedules do not accommodate them participating, but they are there for us when we need them. And so our philosophy is, mental health affects everyone. And so with that, we think without limits when we go to engage with different partners, because it doesn't matter if you work at the grocery store or you work at the bank. There's a good chance that you know a young person or a family who is challenged with mental health struggles. And so our goal is that we don't limit our partnerships to just people who are working in mental health, but that we really bridge and spread out. And so our what we did is we started out by making a list of what youth and young adults need, and created a list of everything we could think of, and then we turned that list and reached out to those partners in the community. And so in addition to behavioral health, some of our partners include representatives from colleges and universities. We have police officers, individuals from the Guardian ad litem, public defender's office, child welfare and foster care. health insurance companies, faith and spiritual leaders, Department of Health, career centers, housing providers, grocery stores and restaurants, parks and recreations, yoga, art, community centers, pharmacy, and just anyone we could think of. And this is not something that you do overnight. It's something that takes time, but you slowly build your partnerships as young people are coming to engage with the program and they express their needs. If we don't have it internally, we're figuring out who we can bring to the table or who we can partner with to help better support that young person. Okay, so just an overview of our program, just to give you a background on Florida Healthy Transition. So Florida Healthy Transition works with youth and young adults between the ages of 16 to 25 who are residing in Hillsborough or Pinellas County, which is known as the Tampa Bay area here in Florida. Also, we are looking for individuals who have a diagnosis within the DSM-5 or exhibiting behaviors that meet diagnosis or thoughts related to self-harm to self or harm to others. And what this allows us is, first of all, being able to have the program in 2 adjacent counties allows us the ability to be able to train our staff together at one time in the same place. Also to provide cross training and strengthen our team where young people are working together as a team and they don't feel alone because they have their counterparts right across the bridge or within their office with them. Also, what is really great about the program is that being at risk of or exhibiting behaviors allows us to find those individuals who may not identify with having a mental health challenge, those who may just not be feeling well. We're allowed to engage with them and interact with them. And so we're trying to engage with them and at the same time reduce the stigma that some youth and young adults carry for having a behavioral health diagnosis or having being perceived as that in their family, because we know sometimes families have family cultural beliefs and religious beliefs that do not support having mental health challenges. And so we try to be flexible with our language, and we'll continue to discuss that as we move forward with the presentation. All right, so Florida Healthy Transitions core values. And it's important to note that these values were developed with our youth and young adults, not for them. And so a lot of our program, almost every aspect of our program is developed with youth and young adults at the table, that they're involved in every aspect of the program and they decide what the core values are. They decide how things will flow through the program. And so our first core value is youth and young adults, choice and voice are critical to achieving successful outcomes. Youth and young adults are the first experts of their lives. Peers are critical to the success of young people because young people often learn best from other young people, and that we must meet young people in their communities. And I can't count, I would be a millionaire if I had a dollar for every time I heard someone say, we are working and we're going to have a meeting about this young person and we're going to bring some experts to the table. And I always raise my hand and say, is the young person going to be at the table? And they say no. um, and our philosophy in our program is that the young adult is the first expert of their life, that you can bring specialists to the table to assist in providing services and assist them in helping them achieve their goals. But that young person is the first expert of their life, and they may not have the resources or the ability to communicate their needs, but they know what they need for their life, and we just have to support them and provide them with the things that they need in order for them to be successful. All right, so overview of our numbers served. So between January 2016 and December 2019, we have outreach to over 30,000 community residents, screened over 17,000 youth and families for crisis and intervention services, provided over 1,400 referrals to behavioral health or related services, and enrolled 285 youth and young adults in intensive case management or wraparound services, and facilitated mental wellness support groups to 348 youth and young adults. So some of our lessons learned. The first thing is engaging young people in the process. That a lot of times, based on funding, sometimes we have to put programs together, and we don't have a lot of time to have focus groups and get people involved. And being frank, we don't have the money to do it. That we can't ask a lot of people without being able to pay them for their time, because we know that young people have jobs, they have lives outside of their mental health, and so we kind of go with based on the information that we have. But even with that process, it's still very important, before you implement the program, that you have a process for obtaining youth and young adult voice, whether that's a group that's already occurring, or whether it's a group that you've hired that consists of young adults and youth. It's important to have them at the table. And so our first process was to assemble a committee of young people who are knowledgeable about the current social and emotional trends of other young people, and use the people that you have access to. Again, for now, if you have young adult staff, if there's a group of young people who are already meeting, sometimes working with child welfare groups, they have a group of young people who have aged out of foster care that may be a great resource to reach out to. But it's really important to have that up front as much as possible, that input and feedback. Also developing an ongoing meeting schedule. And again, don't be afraid to leverage technology. Sometimes being able to leverage technology overcomes those barriers of not being able to pay people, because now they don't have to come in person, they don't have to drive or ride the bus, and they can be there via their phone or their computer. And so being able to have that voice is extremely important. Um, and through our process, what we have done is we've integrated the voice of our youth and young adults in all of our processes. And that includes our program flow, our evaluation components and outcomes, our forms and assessments, outreach events, outreach items. They call it swag. Also, our social media, our language for our social marketing, ads, radio, website, television, whatever we do, and we make sure that we have their feedback. Also, we ensure that all of our staff have the opportunity to participate in meetings. So there are no meetings outside of a managers only meeting, which we have very few of. There are no meetings which we say, okay, this is just going to be the older adults, or the supervisors and managers, but our young adult staff will not be participating. Every meeting, they have the opportunity to participate. So we have our provider planning meeting, which is just our team huddle. We have our local transition team meeting, which includes our team as well as our community partners. And then we have our local evaluation team meeting. And so the young people have the option, if they're interested in learning about the evaluation of the program and being a part of the questions and the trends and looking at the outcomes, they're welcome to attend that. And so essentially it's learning for them as well, because some of them are interested in being supervisors and managers, and they're interested in pursuing those post-secondary majors as well. And so it's a learning opportunity for everyone. In addition to working with our staff, we also facilitate focus groups with our participants. So if something occurs in the data that looks like we're trending in a negative way, or there's just something that we've seen a lot of response on, for example, in our needs assessment, we found that we were working with a lot of young people who were aging out of foster care. And then when we asked the question about trauma, a lot of them said they had not experienced trauma in their lives. And so that would be something we would take back to the group, just to ask more questions about it. Like, what are their thoughts about it? How can we help them with that? Do they need help with it? And just to gain more information. And so that's something we're constantly doing. We also have focus groups with our participants on bus ads. If we're doing a bus ad, or we're doing a billboard, or we're ordering new supplies, and we say, okay, we're going to order wristbands. Do you guys want the wristbands in green and blue like we ordered previous, or do you want new colors? And so we're constantly keeping them involved and engaged. And if they respond with an answer of something that we're unable to do, we communicate that back as well. That's a great idea, and we're going to put it in the parking lot for right now. And if policy or funding or whatever is the barrier to that changes, then we will go back and look at this. But we're making sure that not only are we asking them for their feedback, but we're implementing it. And if we're unable to implement it, we're telling them why.
Hey, Tanisha, it's Gwen,
Yes.
and I know we said we wouldn't interrupt, but this seemed to be critical to your discussing the program. So Heidi has asked if you have adult peers or young adults on your staff.
Yes, that's a great question. And so for our program, and we use peers a different way. We call our peers, we consider a peer someone with lived and life experience. And so for our peers account for at any given time 70% of our staff. And so we have peers or young adults with lived in life experience working in the traditional peer support role. We have them working as our transitional um, case managers. We call them transitional specialists. We also have them, some of them have gone back to school and they're licensed and they're working as therapists. We have them working as educational vocational support. We also work with 211, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. 211, the contact center, is the front end of our program, and they are open 24 hours, 7 days a week to handle crisis situations. We actually have young adults working in those call centers as well, who is able to contact the young adults who call in, and also the youth, and follow up with them. And so our program, we have youth and young adults throughout. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Thank you.
Tanisha, yes, yeah, you're getting,
Okay.
that was what people were looking for.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Keep the questions coming. Also, another thing that we're doing in keeping young people engaged is we work with our participants, those who are interested in building their leadership skills. They help facilitate group, and also they help, they serve as co-facilitators at conferences. And so that's one of our things. As conferences come up now, not so much, but in the past, we would say, okay, this conference is occurring. This is the theme for the conference. Who's interested in facilitating in the conference? And the young adult staff would say, okay, I am, and I have a participant that would be good. And so we're constantly, all the time, engaging our young adult staff and our youth and young adult participants. All righty. Our second strategy is to develop multiple entry points. And so this is an example of a flow from our program. And so at the top, we have outreach. So individuals can enter the program through the community, through a referral or a community outreach event, or through another individual. And word of mouth is still one of our best referral sources, because if someone is in that group and they're experiencing the services and the games and the partnership with their peers, they're more likely to refer another friend who is experiencing those same challenges to the group. Also, we have our youth, young adult, and family members can contact our 211 Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, or Tampa Bay Cares. And again, this is our 211 contact center. They're a crisis hotline, and they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And someone's always there answering the phone. And we have two young adult staff. One works as an intervention specialist, and one works as a care coordinator in both counties. And so they're following up with the young people. We have someone that follows up in the mornings and afternoons. We have someone who follows up with them in the evenings, because a lot of them are in school. Then we have them, they will screen them, they will provide information and referral services. They will also provide crisis intervention and suicide prevention services, and referrals and linkages to substance use and mental health support and services. And so one of the benefits of this is that a lot of times people will call 211 as a resource for community services. And so they may be calling for a food pantry, they may be calling for a child care. And while they're on the phone, the person on the other end at 211 is screening them not only for that service, but for other needs. And so they may be asking questions, and they find out, like, not only is this person seeking child care, but they have another child who is experiencing severe behavioral health challenges due to a recent situation in their life. And so they can provide that child care resources, and they can also provide that referral to Healthy Transitions. Also, once they are referred to the program, they are referred by the 211 care coordinator, and they are linked to Healthy Transitions for more services. And once we refer them to the provider agency, they have a choice. So they can enter in wraparound services, which is our most intense service. Also, intensive case management. They can enter in through educational vocational support services or our mental wellness groups. And so with educational and vocational support services, we find that over 50% of our youth or young adults are not enrolled in school or a vocational program, and they do not possess a high school diploma or a GED. And so for a young person who's trying to enter the job market, that makes it extremely tough for them to be able to obtain livable wages without a high school diploma. And so we have someone who specializes in helping them navigate that, helping them prepare for a job interview, but also helping them study and practice for their GED, or helping them return to school through Penn, Foster, or another platform. Also, our mental wellness groups is something that we created for those young people who need extra support, or those who are skeptical about group. They may not be ready to enter services. They may be feeling sad or lonely, um, or depressed, but they may not be ready to go in to see a therapist. And so our mental wellness groups are facilitated multiple times a week in different locations in the community. And this is another example of how useful community partnerships are. So for example, we have one of our groups at a local church, and the church is empty during the week on this specific day, so we can have group in there, and the church has a kitchen. And so we take that opportunity to teach classes about cooking on a budget, how to eat healthy with limited income for our young people. We also have a restaurant that we work with in town, and they allow us to come there with staff um, to provide games and just talk. We call it community. And so it's sitting at a table, it's playing board games, and it's talking about life. And we find that to be very therapeutic for our young people. And it's really a lot of just looking at therapy and healing through a different lens. In addition to that, we have our website. We also have a dedicated line at our 211 contact center. We have a dedicated text line for young people. So in our information and our brochures and our outreach materials, they have a QR code that they can scan, and it will bring them to our website. It also contains a dedicated text line, and so they can text FHT to 211, 898-211, and it will take them to our care coordinator and intervention specialist for 211, and they're able to have a conversation with that individual regarding services. And what's been really cool for us is that we've been able to refer people directly to services just based on text. And so that person never came in, they never called 211, just through text. They were able to screen them and refer them and link them effectively and efficiently to direct services, which is pretty cool. And I think it is also an indication of where direct services and where assessments are going for youth and young adults, that they're on their phones and we're meeting them there. The fast track areas that you see on this diagram are something that we created with our community partners in mind. And so normally individuals from the community will call into 211, and they will be screened and linked to a staff person at our direct service organization. Through Fast Track, our community partners have access to referrals, and they can send those referrals directly to the primary contacts for each of those sites, our site in Hillsborough or our site in Pinellas, and they basically bypass the 211 call center because they already know that person is eligible, and they send the referral directly to the staff, which aids in our ability to contact them sooner. All right, so developing goals and action steps. So first thing is to identify the population and then to develop outreach and engagement goals and action steps. So what we found is a lot of times people will say, I would like to outreach to this population, or I would like to engage with this population, and it's just words. And so our goal is to put action behind that, to actually create something where we can measure ourselves on, did we achieve that or did we not? And it makes it real and it forces us to put action behind it. And so, for example, our goal would be figuring out first who we're trying to reach, and then what type of way are we trying to reach them? How many are we trying to reach? And so an example goal is we will create we will increase the diversity of our weekly wellness groups by engaging with and enrolling 8 individuals who identify as Hispanic or Latinx by August 31st, 2020. And that's a real goal. It's a SMART goal, and it's something that's achievable. It breaks down to about 2 individuals per month, and we feel like that's attainable, but that's something that we put in the forefront of our minds, and we tailor services and tailor our outreach activities around that. And so it's important when you're trying to engage with youth and young adults or any population that you set goals for that. Okay, the fourth strategy is determining the language and terminology. So what type of language will you use? Like what's cool versus what's clinical? So when we first started out, for example, the name of the program was Healthy Transitions, and we figured we would just be Florida Healthy Transitions. And to our young people seeing the name, and they were like, oh, that sounds like Healthy Start. Like that's just very clinical. And so they created this logo in this name that you see on your screen, Bent Not Broken. And the idea behind that is that life is hard and that we all go through tough times, but we're all bent and not broken, and that we can rebound from that. And so that's what resonated with them. That's what they created. And so for young people, the name is Bent Not Broken. And for the clinical staff and our community providers, it's Florida Healthy Transitions. And so on our outreach and marketing materials, we use both interchangeably so that people know it's the same program. And again, it's a strategy for including youth and young adults. So just think about this focus group of young people coming together and creating this name and this brand and this logo, and actually seeing it somewhere. Like that means someone heard me and they listened to me. And how cool is it to go and to be able to tell your family or your friends, like, we created that logo and group, and here's a brochure, here's a bus that has the logo on it. And so that helps us to, again, build rapport and to continue to engage with our young people. And so looking at language, what's old school versus new school, because a lot of times the things that we think are cool are no longer cool, and the young people know about it. So that's why it's important to keep them at the forefront in incorporating their ideas regarding what terminology and language are used. Also, are we using polished words? Are we using street cred? Are we using the valley versus the mountain? What are we using? And so also, will the message be translated for persons who speak other language? And really, at the end of the day, there's no one size fits all language or messages. So our goal is to use the language that's used by the majority and that the majority of people can resonate with. And so some of our messaging is, are you feeling sad, lonely, or stuck? We're here to help. You are not alone. Bent Not Broken. Also, over time, when we first started, our logo, the background was black, and over time we changed it to blue. The young people said, okay, like the black makes it seem sad, and so we're feeling better, and we would like to lighten it up a little bit and show that there is hope for youth and young adults. And so that's what we did, and we use both interchangeably as much as possible. But again, that's the idea from the young people. And I think someone asked a question about um, young people who have the inability to recognize their illness, um, and trying to convince them that, I guess, they have mental health challenges. And so one of the things that we do with Healthy Transitions is we don't try to force people to acknowledge their mental health challenge. We don't try to force them to obtain a diagnosis, we meet them where they're at. And so if they're having mental health challenges, we can either approach them and say, hey, like, you're having these struggles, and if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, or you're going to end up being hospitalized for this. Or we can meet with them and say, hey, like, what are your goals in life? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do in your future? And I can help you get there. And so, for example, the young person may have a goal of obtaining their first apartment. They may have a goal of obtaining their first car, um, obtaining a job, or just getting a new purse or a new pair of shoes. Whatever it is, that's a big deal to them. It's a big deal to us as well. And so we will work with them to create that a plan for that goal. And so if the goal is to purchase a new pair of shoes, then the steps are, so we got to first identify the cost of the shoes, and then how are you going to pay for the shoes? If the goal is to find a job, when you find a job, you have to be able to maintain the job in order to get consistent paychecks to be able to purchase the item that you're seeking to purchase. But if you're having mental health challenges, it's going to be hard for you to maintain that job. And so what are some options do you think that you think could work for you? And some of them will say, okay, I'm going to pray. I may play basketball when I get upset. I will do certain things to manage my emotions. And we allow them to make their own decisions regarding that. And most of the time, they will make a decision and say, you know, I do think I would like to talk to a therapist. But if we turned it the other way and say, we're not going to help you find a job to get those shoes until you go and talk to a therapist, they're not going to follow through. And so essentially, we get the same outcome. It's just a different approach. Right. The next step is determining the engagement type, determining your purpose. What type of engagement are you trying to achieve? And so we have information and dissemination, which includes our flyers and our brochures. We also have increasing awareness, which we do at speaking engagements. We have trivia, we have events. Then we have our call to action. So again, call 211. It's available 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can text FHT to 898-211 for help. You can attend these events. You can refer a friend. Other people in the community can refer youth and young adults to the program as well. And so really the best strategy is a hybrid strategy, calling people to action, having them do different things, meeting them again where they are, finding out what's hot for youth, how are youth engaging to other services, and trying to mirror those strategies. Also, it's important, this discusses engagement that happens up front, but it's important to continue the engagement once the young person is enrolled. And so one of the things that we do is find out what the youth or young adult is interested in. And so we've had peer staff who've gone swimming with another young person, that they were having a hard time engaging them, and they knew that swimming, they loved swimming. And so they set up a time to meet with them at the pool, and they dressed out and got in the pool and they swam with them, and they had conversations as they were swimming. Um, we've also had staff who've attended the Special Olympics dance or proms with young people. They've gone to their graduations. And so it's really showing them that you care, and building that engagement. Also, our young people will go out and play basketball with the other young people. And during basketball, they're talking about life. They're talking about their challenges. They're talking about their struggles. We've colored with young people. I mean, it just really meeting them where they are and engaging with them in a way that they prefer to be engaged with. Also, we've taken field trips. We've gone to Big Cat Rescue, and that was prior to the Tiger King show. So we've taken field trips with young adults. We've also scheduled dinners at restaurants for the young people. For a lot of our young people, unfortunately, they don't have all that family where everyone sits down together at a table. A lot of them have aged out of foster care, and a lot of them, their families are very toxic for them, and so they don't have that experience. And to be able to socialize with peers at a restaurant is big, and it's important. I mean, it's something that they may have never experienced before, to be able to sit down, to dress up, sit down, put a napkin in your lap, and order from a menu amongst your peers, and just have a good evening and good conversation and healthy conversation. And so that's another benefit and a perk of choosing your partners wisely, because without these restaurants being our partners, we would not be able to have that type of activity. But with the restaurants and them understanding our mission and our purpose and being agreeable to saying, you know, this is a slow night for us, come on in and we'll do this for you and your group, it works immensely, and it has a great effect. Um, Also, we continue to engage our participants through the participant planning group. So we have a focus group that continues to meet. It's a planning group of young people, young adult staff, and also our young people enrolled in the program. And they come together to plan activities for the month, and they create a calendar around it. All right, the next strategy is identifying engagement platforms. And so it really depends on where your young people are at. But again, going back to meeting them where they are, we've done billboards, commercials, standees in the mall and in the food courts, also attended provider meetings. We've just parked and walked in the street where people are at restaurants and in town, social media through Facebook and Twitter, public transportation, bus shelters, benches. Again, having our dedicated text line, having QR codes added to our website that lead to our website on our advertisement. So if a young person is out in the community, they don't have to stop at a place in front of their friends and say, let me write this down. They can take a picture of it with their phone, and the QR code leads back to the website, and they can go into the movie theater and follow up later. These are just examples. The next strategy is to be creative to reduce costs, that there are still things that you can do with no budget or a limited budget. Again, establishing relationships with account representatives at your local advertising or broadcasting agencies, identifying radio stations and radio personalities who are passionate about your work, identifying community partners who may be willing to create a shared marketing strategies and pooling your money together. Also identify local foundations, philanthropic groups, sport teams, banks who are willing to support your program. And there are a lot of these things right in your community. And again, our philosophy is we assume that everyone in some way has been impacted by mental health challenges, whether it's their own personal or someone that's close to them or a neighbor. Everyone knows someone who is impacted by mental health. And then evaluate your outcomes. Use your data to find out, are you meeting your goals? You said you were going to outreach to this particular group and enroll this many people from that group. Did that actually happen? What populations are underrepresented? We pull our data. We say, okay, these are the breakdowns of our participants. This group is missing. We need to do specific outreach in those communities. And also qualitative surveys and stories are just as valuable. Finding out from the participants directly through surveys or focus groups what's working, what's not working, what are some challenges, and asking them how to improve it. And they will tell you, even if it's having brownies or cookies on group night, they will let you know. Also, this is an example of our baseline to 6-month data comparison. And so again, we're pulling the data and then we're going back and looking at how we can improve. What is it? What happened to the scores? So for example, with Hispanic and Latino, we see that we had 74%, or we'll go with 11% of our participants were Hispanic at baseline. And 6 months later, we have, sorry about that, let me go back. 15% of our participants were Hispanic at baseline, and at 6 months we had 19%. And so we look for changes. And if anything is decreasing, if we would have came back and looked at it 6 months later and said, oh, wow, we went from 15% of our participants being identified as Hispanic or Latino, and now we're down to 10% or 5%, then we have to go back to our group and say, let's have a huddle to figure out what's going on and how we can make sure we're meeting the needs of this population, because we're losing them. What are they finding jobs? What is the situation that's going on with this particular population? Because sometimes too, people disengage with group, but there are good things that are happening in their lives. They may have moved, they may have gotten married. And so we want to look at what's going on with them, but always be cognizant of the loss and how we can improve at all times. All right, so this is what we are doing now, and I'll just run through this briefly. Can everybody see this?
Yes,
Okay,
we sure can. Yep.
Yeah,
awesome.
we can.
Okay, thank you. And so that was the then, and this is what we're doing now since COVID. And you all will receive a copy of this list as well. But this is just an overview. The first strategy is first to stop, breathe, and practice patience. That people are dealing with this situation in their own way, that it may take time for you to be able to engage or re-engage with young people because it's a lot for them, especially our young people who had just gotten jobs and they were doing well and now they've been furloughed, or young people who had worked so hard to get back on track and get in school and get their GED, and now graduation is uncertain or being put on hold, and so we have to make room for that. um, Also ensure the safety and wellness of the program staff because they can't give what they don't have themselves, and so it's important for them and you to take care of yourself. And leveraging technology for meetings, both participant and team meetings. And I won't read these word for word for the sake of time, but we've been using technology a lot to engage with our young people through games, through trivia questions, and really trying to keep them engaged through technology. We do have participants who are not interested in doing Zoom calls, and what we do is we add them to our follow-up list, and a peer staff will reach out to them once a week to follow up with them just to do a wellness check to make sure they're still well. Um, and we recently received a donation from one of our local partners who purchased snacks for their staff. And we will have those snacks, we are organizing them in a basket, and we will be able to deliver them to the participants using social distancing, but be able to at least allow them to see someone's face and get some snacks in the process. Um, we've did things like the COVID playlist, where participants submitted songs and created a playlist where they can come on to a virtual Zoom. Also, keep in mind that sometimes it may be helpful to create a lights off meeting where everyone joins the meeting virtually and they use a cartoon or another photo instead of their own. And it helps to reduce the stigma of some people not having a photo up and some people having a photo up, especially for those individuals who have severe social anxiety. Virtual movie night, and the list goes on. But I will stop here and open it for questions. Thank you very much for your participation and for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tanisha. So we do have some questions, and I'd encourage all of the participants to, as we start asking these questions, to put other questions into the chat box. Tanisha, to get started a bit earlier, we've had a couple of questions about whether you're partnering with the juvenile justice system in your jurisdiction, and if so, what does that partnership look like?
Yes, so we are partnering with our juvenile justice system, and that's a great question. So here locally, the goal is to reduce the number of young people who are um, I don't want to say incarcerated, but in juvenile justice residential programs. That would be the correct term. And so they are really trying to get ahead of it by doing a lot of prevention programs and starting out in elementary schools and things like that. And so for them, that partnership is another way of looking at things, because a lot of times with DJJ, their policy is you're going to do this and this is the way you're going to do it. And if you don't, these are the consequences. In us, it's what do you want to do with your life? What are your goals? And how can we help you reach your goals? And so a lot of times young people tend to be more favorable to our approach. And as long as it's the same outcome and we're keeping them out of trouble, it works good for both. And so that's the way we've been partnering with them, that they send referrals to us and that we're able to kind of intervene to keep that young person from going back into the system repeatedly and really getting them engaged and on track with reaching their goals.
Hi, Tanisha. That was my bad. What's the difference in your thinking between wraparound services and intensive care management?
Great question. So, intensive case management would be a young person that says, I just need help finding a house. Like the situation at home is toxic and I need help finding a house, and that's it. And so it's intense because it's urgent, and it's case management because it's helping that young person sort through resources versus a wraparound team where the goal may be I would like to obtain a job, but I have anger management issues that prevent me from doing that. And I would like to reconnect with my birth mom because that is the source of my anger. And so that requires a team of goals. We go through a strengths assessment, and there are ongoing meetings with who can help you be accountable to these goals. Like, what are you going to do if you meet your birth mom and it doesn't turn out the right way? Is there someone else in your family or in your community that can help support you through this? And so that's bringing other people to the table and basically kind of sharing the responsibility of, and no point intended, wrapping around this young person. So it's more of a group approach versus an individual approach. And the goals tend to be more long term a lot of times than the case management.
Great, thank you, Tanisha. And we did get sort of a spurt of questions when you were showing your service flow diagram. So I suspect that that also is valuable to the partners in your community as you were talking about in that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have folks that are curious about the texting system that you were talking about. And if you have either a resource to direct folks to explain that service, or if you'd be willing to talk through a bit more about how that works.
Sure. And so with our 211 organization, they already had texting in place. So I would say if you're interested in it, that you may want to touch bases with your crisis emergency support service in your area because a lot of times they have other campaigns that are going on. Um, and we were able to join that campaign because it's essentially it's one text system and it has different subgroups under it. So they have one, for example, that may be 211 help, and then they may have one for seniors. Seniors text, seniors in need of services may text senior 898-211, and Healthy Transitions is FHT for Florida Healthy Transitions 898-211. And so essentially it's tagging on to that system. But what we've done is along with that, that text line goes to a specific person. And so in our program, in the 211 call center, the text line is connected to a young adult and it's ran and managed during regular business hours, but there's always a backup that is available via phone at the 211 call center 24 hours, 7 days a week. So that person receives that text and they're providing feedback to that young person, whether it's today is the anniversary of my uncle's death, and I was really close to my uncle, and I'm having trouble managing this. Whatever is going on with that young person, there's another young person on the other side of that text and texting back and forth with them. Actually, we've been able to engage young people into care because of that texting, where we had a young person, for example, that says, this is the date that my mom died, and every year I feel sad and I feel like I want to harm myself. And the 211 staff talked them through that and provided them with resources, and then followed up and the next year and say, I remember this last year around this time you told me this was a tough year for you. And that young person was like, wow, like you remembered, like somebody actually remembered and followed up. And that was enough for them to say, these people care and I'm coming in. We have young people who, for example, were homeless. And he was unable to enter into a shelter because he had a pet, and so he wanted to sleep in the car with his pet, and he also had an exam the next day. And that 211 care coordinator followed up via text and say, hey, I'm just checking on you to see how last night went, and also to check on how that exam is going. And that sometimes is enough to keep that young person engaged. we also use that text line for young people who are at home with their families, but their family does not support them receiving mental health services. So that text line allows us to hold on to them sometimes until they turn 18, where they can consent on their own for services.
And Tanisha, one of the things I'm thinking about is that the learning, oh, excuse me, the learning community had a webinar on crisis text line about this time last year. I think it was for in May, and Johanna is looking for that reference now, and we'll get it for you. But that's another option for communities.
Mhm.
We have some funding questions, Tanisha, about the dinners and activities that you take the young adults on, and how you fund those, and any suggestions you have, how you get businessmen for buy-in to your program and assist you as you described to us.
Great question. So a lot of times I think we think that it will be hard, but once you go and you speak with people about what you're doing in the community and how you're working with young people in this new approach to therapy and providing them with a sense of social connectedness, people are in awe and like, oh wow, like you're doing that, like how can we help? And a lot of times I think it's untapped resources, things that we don't think about, and we kind of stay siloed in our own behavioral health area,
Uh-huh.
and we don't think about that, but there are people in the community that are willing to help. And so, for example, with Big Cat Rescue, that was free tickets given to us by Big Cat Rescue. The restaurant, we had a staff person who had a friend that was a manager of a restaurant, and he talked to his friend about this group, and he's like, bring them. Like, Wednesday is my slow night, Wednesday evening is our group night. It works.
Mhm.
We will have the young people meet us there. And we use Uber and Lyft because we found that some of our young people know how to navigate the bus and they're able to do that effectively. But we have a lot that are impacted by severe social anxiety to the point where it prohibited them from finishing school or maintaining stable employment. And Uber and Lyft, that front door service, one-on-one, just works much better for them. And so we're able to coordinate transportation to the locations using that. But a lot of it is just community partnerships. With our church, we're able to actually bring them on as a really affordable or reduced like lease. It's kind of like our mobile drop-in center. And so our goal is, instead of one place, we have multiple places within the community, and they allow us to be in their facilities for either free or very minimal cost. And so with the church, it's a matter of paying a small lease, and they gave us a room. We were able to go in that room, and we have young people. They've painted things for the walls. We've had furniture added and all kinds of things to make it youth and young adult friendly, in addition to being able to use that kitchen for tutorials on healthy eating and healthy living.
Thank you, Tanisha.
You're welcome.
The questions keep coming. So here's a question specifically, I think, about what you're sharing on your screen right now. What technology platform are you using to engage with your young adults during COVID-19? And how did you select that platform? And how did your agency gain access to that platform?
Okay, great question. And so currently we are using Microsoft Teams, and we're also using Zoom. And our goal behind that is that as long as we're not sharing protective health information or HIPAA related information, we're able to meet with the participants. And so, of course, with a lot of the things that have been going on via Zoom, we make sure that the meeting is not advertised on Facebook and Twitter, and it's more of word of mouth, and individuals have the freedom to not use their real name or not use their real picture, and it's password protected. Um, we found that using Zoom allows us to have breakout rooms. And so we can have multiple games going on at the same time. We can have trivia breakout sessions where individuals compete in groups against other teams. Um, it just allows us a lot of flexibility. So I think right now there are more and more platforms being introduced, and we're kind of testing them out as a team before we roll them out to participants. But for us, it's kind of what we feel has the most flexibility and allows us to establish an ongoing meeting where participants can have it on their calendar and be able to click a button and enter group with no hassle. Hello?
Oh, maybe Gwen and I are both on mute at this
No,
point.
that was my fault. I am going to have Tier's going to be sharing a thing about a state by state interactional map that you can click on and see how the telemed restrictions have loosened and changed. That is sort of tied into that, but might be helpful to people. So Tanisha, what do you recommend for youth who are in need of mental health services but are resistant to virtual treatment, since that's all that's available now? You
I
and I talked some about this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
reaching them via phone is also an option. And a lot of times, um, meeting virtual, I think it's really again going back to what the youth and young adults are, where they're at and where you can meet them at. For some, it may be on the phone. For some, it may be virtual, but not as a group and one on one. And some, they enjoy virtual, but they don't want to show their face, and that's fine too. If you have a background or a cartoon or a picture that you've taken in the past, and you feel like that's what you would like to represent you for the day, like it's really just meeting them where they're at. And we also have, if it becomes a crisis, we have crisis mobile units too that can go out to meet with them and just kind of make sure they're safe as well. But for the most part, we've been able to engage with our young people, if not virtually, via phone.
Thanks, Tanisha. And I'm going to do a follow-up question to that, but also encourage folks in the chat box who are participating that know of resources or suggestions. Feel free to chat about those. I think it's clear that we've got some folks in the room that would like to learn more about these creative ways to engage young people when our virtual reality isn't ideal. Tanisha, are you having any specific challenges where youth may not have access to internet services? And is there any way you can offer them support to work through this challenge?
Currently, we do not, because a lot of the phone companies have recently issued plans like free internet plans or increased internet plans, like through Sprint and through Assurance Wireless. And those tend to be the plans that we help our participants obtain. They have special acceptance for individuals that are on Medicaid or low income. And so they recently, during COVID, increased the amount of internet that they would allow. And so that has worked really good for us.
And Tanisha, we had somebody, this goes back to that virtual and how you reach out. A follow-up to when you were talking about people who are resistant to virtual things, about how also resistant to phones. That was Lisa. Do you have any ideas about that, who are resistant not just to computers but also to phones?
Hmm. I will say in the past, what we've done is a lot of times, fortunately, the person lives with a loved one or a family member who will maintain contact and kind of
Oh,
help them navigate that. And we've had times when we were going out, and I'm sure we still do with, for example, parents. We have a lot of older parents with their young adult children who still live at home with them. Um, and we're fortunate enough to be able to have a release to speak to that older adult and be able to gain access to that young person and kind of help them navigate it on speakerphone. Or when we were able to go out, we've had times where we've gone to a young person's house like 3 or 4 times and just sat in the living room with their parents until they eventually said, okay, I'm going to come out and meet with this person. But yeah, a lot of times it's reaching out to that person that's living with them or a friend who may be nearby and kind of navigating services through that individual.
And I think in this, in the social distancing era, when you were talking about taking the snacks and leaving them on the porch, that might also be an opportunity to talk to somebody through a screen door or the porch
Window.
visit. Okay, what best practices do you use to train your staff on engaging youth when they are new to this type of work? And I think that's something a lot of people could also answer for us in the chat box because it's new world for everybody.
Absolutely. We are using a lot of motivational interviewing. Of course, we train them in wraparound, and really, I mean, we do a lot of role playing, and I think it's tough because I think in a lot of ways, because we have so many young adult staff, they actually teach us how to engage and navigate with youth and young adults, and we more so teach them this is the policy, these are the protocols, these are the rules, these are the agency guidelines. But I think we work together very effectively in that way, because for a lot of our young people, it's just the situations are so unique, from a person who's living at home to a person who's aged out of foster care and does not have a family that they say this is who I can depend on. And so it's really just kind of learning from that young person too, of like, how can I best support you? And again, they may not have the resources or the ability to fully communicate it, but it's learning from them as well. And so for us, it's just been a complete learning experience, and putting those experiences in our library and building that over time. And we have healthy boundaries. Of course, we have a lot of the traditional trainings dealing with the crisis, and things like that. But a lot of it is kind of practice and learning from each other.
Thanks, Tanisha. Two things. Do you mind scrolling down on your screen just a smidgen? Everyone's dying to know what comes after 19. Thank you.
So 19 is my one of my brainstorm babies that I'm like, we're using Zoom, and it's like, I think we can have a virtual health fair. And so I presented it to the team, and they were like, I think we can. We just need to massage it. So that's something that we are working on, because it will take some forms, but I think it's possible if we had the ability to create like a registration, and we had topics and people signed up for those topics. um, we can automatically program the breakout rooms and have guest speakers for various topics, and just program young people into those breakout rooms to experience that conversation with that specialist. So that's something that we'll be working on as we move forward as well.
Well, that's great. Thanks for showing us that you're still innovating throughout
Yes.
all of this. Yeah. I've personally experienced some really excellent learning and facilitation opportunities with the Zoom breakout rooms. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
Okay, one more question for you, and saying that as a reminder to participants to chat in their questions in the next few moments here. Tanisha, can you talk about how race and ethnicity play a part in your program? And do you consider race during outreach? Does it cause your work to vary?
Um, wow, that's a great question. And it's loaded. So one of the things that we do up front, again, when we previously discussed creating goals, we created goals at the beginning of our program, and we looked at the composition of our community, and we looked at the statistics on mental health challenges, and we cross tabulated those and say, okay, based on the statistics of youth and young adults within this age range, and here are the statistics for this area, this is how many African Americans are potentially living with a behavioral health challenge, this is how many Hispanic, this is how many Caucasian, this is how many Asian, and we broke that down, and then we created attainable but goals that would stretch us as well, about the percent and the number of people from each of those groups that we wanted to reach. And we tailored our outreach around it. We went into those communities and we built rapport with organizations and people and schools within those communities to outreach to those individuals. And so for us, it's very important because we know that individuals and communities of color oftentimes do not resonate with traditional treatment services. And so for us, those are the individuals a lot of times who are falling in the cracks. And so we feel that it is a challenge, but also something that we feel a responsibility to make sure that we look out for. And so we've been really successful in engaging individuals from all populations into the program. And I
Thank you,
think having also having our young adult focus groups and also our planning committee and making sure that that is diverse helps us to continue to engage with individuals from all races, because we have input up front. They're meeting once and twice a month to go over activities, and they create an actual program calendar for participants. So when they call 211 or they come for self-referral or from their parents, there's a calendar that says, you know, you don't have to come in for an assessment up front. You don't have to be seen by a therapist. You can just come and see what group is about, because we know if you come to group 3 times, we pretty much have you. And so there's a calendar that is shared with 211 and shared with the community where young people can engage with group. And it's diverse, it's all types of activities, and we know that it works.
Thank you, Tanisha.
You're welcome.
And this time has gone very, very quickly.
Yes.
We so appreciate everything that you had to share with us, and for all of the participants with your questions and support in there. And we're near our time, and I think the questions have slowed. So a big thank you again to you, Tanisha. A reminder to join the YAS learning community at the Ideas at the Institute. And Tiara has very nicely put the link in there for that. And also she found the link, yay Tiara, for the webinar on the crisis text line, which highlighted the community in Ohio that did a lot to adopt the crisis text line. So take a look at that. Johanna?
Yes, and so as Gwen talks about some of the experiences that are in our learning community that you can access via recording from the past, I would encourage you also to join us at Ideas at the Institute for the content that's coming in the future. So we are planning content to continue in the future months. Focus next month on how to build trusting relationships with young adults. There'll be some really wonderful youth peer perspectives highlighted in that learning session. Everybody who's a member of the free online learning community will get a quick email from Gwen or myself with information to register for that. Alternatively, if you subscribe to the TA Telegram that comes out each week, the registration links will be there once they go live. We are also really keen to invite you to save the date with us for Tuesday, May 5th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be hosting a COVID-19 conversation for young adult professionals. This is an opportunity perfect for those of you that are youth peer providers, youth coordinators, or youth program leads, or supporting any of those roles. This is a part of the larger series being offered by the TA network called Managing Today for a Better Tomorrow, Conversations for COVID-19. Gwen and I will be facilitating an expert panel where you're just really going to hear a ton of amazing resources. And again, that is a save the date request for Tuesday, May 5th at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. The registration links will be out via the learning community and the TA Telegram just as soon as they're put together. So we'd love to hear and see your names and chat messages on that conversation as well.
And believe it or not, Johanna, that's just a week from today.
I can't actually really believe that. So I'll work on remembering what day of the week it is. May 5th. We'll see you all a week from this afternoon. We really appreciate that. For those of you asking about the learning community, any of the Institute links in the chat box will get you close to a place where there's a registration link. We'll drop that again and hopefully provide. Oh, right, we're going to be providing the slides, and the link is live in the slides. It's probably the easiest place to find it. And as we complete today, and as you leave the WebEx platform, there will be a survey link. From one data geek to another data geek, please complete the survey. Otherwise, we don't know how to improve offerings in the future. So we look forward to the link, to your feedback at the survey link as you leave our session today. Tiara, thank you for excellent technology help. Tanisha, thank you for sharing all of your experiences and expertise today. Gwen, thanks for managing the chat box with me.
Yeah, and thank you all. Please be well. Please be well and take care of yourselves as you're taking care of others.